Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Dykstra. I am the CEO of Partners in Food Solutions, which is a consortium of leading global food companies who have come together to share their resources and know-how with small and growing food companies across Africa with the goal of improving food security, nutrition, and economic development. I'm joined today by an outstanding panel of friends and colleagues who are here to share their reflections and insights on this particular partnership, on public-private partnerships in general, and the good things that can happen when strange bedfellows come together and try to accomplish something that none of them can do on their own. They'll also reflect on the importance of addressing food insecurity, particularly in light of the just released UN Sustainable Development Goals. After I introduce our panel, I'll share a little more context on the problem of food insecurity and how these organizations have uniquely come together to attack this challenge. Now let me introduce our panel. Kendall Powell is chairman and CEO of General Mills, a leading global food company based in Minnesota and grounded in its purpose to serve the world by making the food that people love. General Mills operates in more than 100 countries around the world and bringing us brands like Cheerios, Yoplait, Betty Crocker, and more. Bilbrey, chairman, CEO, and president of the Hershey Company. Hershey's is a global confectionery leader known for bringing goodness to the world through its chocolate, sweets, mints, and other great tasting snacks for more than 120 years. We then have Tjada McKenna, who is the Deputy Coordinator for Development for Feed the Future, the U.S. government's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative, as well as the Assistant to the Administrator in USAID's Bureau for Food Security. Then we have Will Warshauer. Will is President and CEO of TechnoServe, a nonprofit working with enterprising people in the developing world to build competitive farms, businesses, and industries. And finally, Mr. Willy Foote. Willy is founder and CEO of Root Capital, a nonprofit social investment fund that grows rural prosperity in poor, environmentally vulnerable places by lending capital, delivering financial training, and strengthening market connections for small and growing agricultural businesses. Please join me in welcoming our panel. Let me now offer just a few comments about the challenge that this group has been working uniquely to address and the way they have gone about it. Lack of access to high-quality, nutritious food causes human suffering and then, in a vicious cycle, prevents the economic growth needed to end food insecurity. Child malnutrition is rampant across sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the world, and millions of adults cannot fully realize their economic and human potential because of hunger and malnutrition. With global food demand set to grow 70 to 80% to feed the estimated 9 billion people by 2050, the opportunity and the need, really, to increase food production in places like Africa is immense. The organizations represented on this panel set out to address this complex problem by focusing on a long-ignored critical link in the food value chain: food processors and mills that source from smallholder farmers on one end of the value chain and provide healthy, local, nutritious foods on the other end of the value chain. Food businesses in Africa spur demand for other goods and services and are a major driver for job creation. However, local food companies often have difficulties producing high-quality, nutritious foods that meet food safety standards and regulatory requirements. At the core of their many challenges is a lack of access to technical and business know-how and finance. This lack of capacity in the food processing sector, which sits in the middle of the food value chain in Africa's most important industry, impedes the health, productive capacity, and potential of millions of people. With that, let me start with you, Ken. At a conference much like this one in Switzerland 8 or 9 years ago, General Mills was challenged to engage on this issue in Africa. Can you share with us a little bit about the background and the formation of Partners in Food Solutions and talk about the benefits of both food security in Africa and to General Mills?
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff. So, and thanks to one and all in the audience for attending. So, General Mills has a very long commitment to addressing hunger and food insecurity. We were a founding partner of Feeding America, which is a food banking network here in the U.S. and the Global Food Bank for almost 40 years ago. We donated hundreds of millions of dollars of food through that kind of opportunity. We believe that we should be engaged in addressing hunger and food insecurity. We're in the food business. We know a lot about it. It's something that we can do, and we believe it's something that we should do to do the right thing. And so we've been very engaged. But we had a desire to help in Africa as a result of the kind of experiences that Jeff described. We're one of a few companies with the capability to really make a difference. But General Mills has a very light footprint in Africa, so we didn't really have the capability to do anything ourselves. And so as we thought about the problem and what we could do, we went back to our deepest expertise, which really is food processing. We don't really know that much about the farming sector. We're not retailers, but we know a lot about the middle of the value chain and how to process and make food very, very efficiently. So the idea that we had was, or the challenge that we set ourselves is, can we find a way to very efficiently transfer the technology and the know-how that we have to these small and medium-sized enterprises in Africa. And as you heard from Jeff, these are companies that are very well led, but they need expertise, and it's a very, very important part of the value chain, because if we can help these companies increase their productivity and quality and packaging and shelf life, this sort of thing, stabilize them, help them prosper and grow, they in turn will increase their demand and their sourcing from local farmers and local ingredient producers. And that to us is really the prize here, is get these processors on a good direction. They in turn will create demand from local farmers. So what happened basically was the head of innovation and technology at General Mills, a guy named Peter Erickson, who'd thought about this a lot as we went on this journey at General Mills, really on a napkin at a hotel in Nairobi, laid out this idea for how would this thing work. And what it involved was creating on the ground food technologists, African food technologists who are trained here and know the environment and know the context, who can go into these companies that want to partner with us, help them define their technical opportunities and problems in a way that R&D scientists at, for example, General Mills in Minneapolis can work on. I mean, scientists need to have a very clear scope and very clear direction, and so they would define it on the ground in Africa, send that problem, digitally to technologists 8,000 miles away, and they would, our scientists would work on it and develop solutions that could then be applied. So that was the idea. To really bring the idea to life, we needed to do some other things. We partnered with TechnoServe. You've already heard Will introduced. They are a world-class organization. They are the on-the-ground partner. They find the technologists and train them and get them in place. And so they were a crucial first partner. They were quickly joined by 3 other corporate partners. Cargill, our neighbor down the street in Minneapolis, a global food powerhouse. Buehler, the Swiss-based equipment supplier, they make processing equipment for the industry, and DSM, the micronutrient organization. And then also coming into the partnership was Root Capital, who helped these small companies get access to finance in these African countries. And thank you, Willy. So those were the first slate of partners, and then I should conclude by saying, finally, and very importantly, the U.S. Agency for International Development was a critical first partner for Partners in Food Solutions. With Raj Shah and Tjada McKenna, who's on this panel with us today, they really encouraged us to pursue this model at a very early stage when we were trying to figure out if it would work or not, gave us some seed funding, and have been a partner with us all along the way. So a few years ago, PFS was working with a dozen companies in 4 countries. This year, led by Jeff, we're going to serve 120 companies in 6 countries through 360 projects. And these companies will be sourcing ingredients from well over 800,000 smallholder farmers in Africa. Some of our more noteworthy projects would include, and this will just give you a feel for the range, we completely reworked the corn-soy blend that was being made in Malawi. This is a critical food, but that was not really nutritionally as good as it needed to be, and frankly, it didn't taste very good either. So our teams went in and completely reformulated how that product was made, how it was processed, greatly improved it, and is now being used and reaching 1 million people per day in Malawi. We worked on ready-to-use therapeutic foods, so-called RUTFs. These are critical foods used to treat severely malnourished infants and children, and we went in and helped the company greatly improve product quality, product shelf life. We helped them with their sourcing so they could bring down the cost of their ingredients, thereby having more to invest in the program. And these products are now produced at 3 locations in Africa, primarily from Africa-sourced ingredients. And then Ethiopia, where we help producers there to economically produce fortified wheat flour. So this is wheat flour that's fortified with micronutrients. This is a very long-held aspiration of the Ethiopian Food Ministry, and our partnership was able to go in and make that dream a reality. And there are many hundreds of other companies that PFS has supported over the last 5 years, including, I should mention, Fafa Foods in Ethiopia, which is a dairy and cereal company that President Obama visited during his visit to Ethiopia a few months ago. Let me just finish with a few comments, Jeff. While PFS assistance is very rewarding to the many, many clients that we work with in Africa, I will tell you it is also very rewarding to the individuals who actually work with these clients, whether they're at Cargill or Bueller or General Mills, and the General Mills volunteers who work with PFS, and there are 400 of them, primarily scientists and technologists. They tell us that this is the most rewarding and gratifying work that they've done in their careers, and they say, you know, look, this is the best expression of how we can live the company values of General Mills. So it's a very powerful experience for those people who are actually doing the work. So it is really a win-win. And I'll just conclude by saying, I think what maybe many of you will already know, that we're announcing today, and we're so pleased to tell you that the Hershey company is joining the PSF consortium, and they are going to be a great addition, and very specifically will help us expand geographically into West Africa. So we are very, very delighted and happy to have JP and his organization join this PFS team. It's going to be a great addition, and
Thank you, Ken.
We look forward to it.
Yeah, you bet.
JP, let me add my welcome and thanks. We're excited that you're going to help enable us expand from Eastern and Southern Africa to West Africa.
Sure.
So a question, you know, everyone in this room, I think it's safe to say, loves the Hershey products. I read this summer that Minnesota is the highest per capita consumer state of Hershey chocolate bars. I think largely due to the s'mores around our 10,000 lakes over our short summer. So Ken and I are doing our part. But we don't necessarily think of Hershey and nutrition. So talk to us about the journey you're on with that and how this fits into your goals there.
You know, at the foundation of our company, we really know how to make things taste great. We have 250 food scientists. About half of those are PhDs. The rest of them largely have master's degree in food science. So really, food engineering is something that we understand really well. Confectionery is certainly what we do, and then we also expand our products into snacking as well, and we do a lot of research into proteins and other food areas. So one of the things that we're very excited about here is exactly what you said, that we can participate here, and we can also do it in a part of the world that's really important to us, and that's in West Africa. So about 70% of the cocoa that's grown around the world and consumed comes from 2 countries, which is really Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and then the balance comes from a number of different places around the world. So we have a program that we've started. It's focused beginning in Ghana. It's called Nourishing Minds. We're excited about it. It's a program that ensures children, not only in West Africa, but we think ultimately in a lot of places around the world, and certainly here in the United States as well. It helps provide basic nutrition, and with basic nutrition, kids have a better chance of learning and growing and developing in ways that otherwise they can't. It's also consistent with the social impact that our company has had for many years. So if you don't know the story of Milton Hershey, I won't go through the whole thing here, but I'd really encourage you to go back and see what he did. But very quickly in top line, he and his wife founded, at the passing of his wife, they didn't have any kids, but they founded the Milton Hershey School. And this is over 100 years ago, but he essentially put his fortune into an endowment for the betterment of these kids who came from disadvantaged backgrounds, as we would say today. It started out as orphan boys. That endowment today, the time and value of money, we all probably understand, but I'm still always amazed, is $12 billion today. So we have 2,000 kids who from kindergarten all the way through high school receive their education, their basic needs through the vision that Milton Hershey had. So I'm always mindful of the fact that our company's been good stewards of social impact for a long time. So this is really in the heartbeat of what the company does. We recognize that kids have the best opportunity to do well in school when they can focus on their studies and not focus on their stomachs. So we've developed a product, we call it Vivi, and Vivi is a product that is essentially made of peanuts, and peanuts, as you know, is really a combination of protein and fat. And if you're not getting enough sustenance in your system, then those are two really vital things. And in fact, this idea, we're not the inventors of this idea. If you think about ready-to-use therapeutic foods, which has existed for some time, especially dealing with malnutrition kids, you can take a child that maybe would die this week, and if you can intervene with this type of product that provides the appropriate level of proteins and fat, you can literally create an intervention that saves that child's life. A mother can see a difference in a matter of days. So this is a kind of impact that the ready-to-use therapeutic foods we're having in many of these developing countries. And so we realize that we know how to do this, right? And so it's not the core of the business, but it's the core of the kind of science that we deal with. So we've developed a product called Vivi. We had an opportunity to meet with John Mahana, the president of Ghana. And literally over a table session, you know, we were talking about some of the things that our company does. And I brought up this idea. I said, hey, have you heard of these kinds of products? I said, maybe we could work together and we could make these. We'll source it out of your country. And if you can help us from your side, making it available in schools, then we can partner around this idea. And so we basically kind of shook on it, and we went away and started doing the research, and we've worked with some other people who, this is the core of sort of the NGO work that they do. But this was really the genesis of the idea. And so now we have a small factory in Ghana. We make the product. In fact, some of our organization who's here today, they're going to be in Ghana next week to launch the program with a celebration. But this is now a reality. And probably one of the things that I think is core to this type of event and what we all have a choice to be able to do as leaders within corporations is I think, and I'm happy about this, but I think more broadly today, you have more CEOs, you have more leaders in companies that also look beyond the P&L, and they also look for impact. And I think as leaders, we have opportunities to look at the resources we have in companies and ask ourselves the question, what can we do to make an impact, and how can we create a difference in society? And then the sustainability of these programs really come from, can you take a commercial concept and tie it with social impact, and then you can create sustainability and perpetuity and make a difference that goes well beyond what is well-intended philanthropy, but is actually something that teaches people how to grow the core ingredients. You put the factories in the locales, they figure out how to distribute to the products where they're needed. We provide expertise. And through that, I think you then have the ability to create something that maybe is the seed of the idea. We don't fully know what it will ultimately look like, but given to the people who understand the need even better, they then fulfill the dream, they fulfill the promise, and they make it a reality. So it's with great pleasure that we join this group. I'm very pleased to be with the other panelists that are here and obviously speaking to this group today, but we hope to make a small difference and then hopefully over time a big difference.
Great, thank you, JP. So Concordia celebrates public-private partnerships. We've heard from one of those P's, private. Tjada, would like you to represent the public voice here from USAID and talk a little bit about how a partnership like this, how that helps accomplish Feed the Future goals, other partnerships like it. What specific lessons have been uncovered from this partnership or others that you'd like to share?
Great, thank you. Private sector engagement is critical and essential to achieving development goals and eradicating extreme poverty. Economic growth is just a necessary precursor for development conditions and development success. And without it, without the strong private sector growing in tandem with aid assistance and other things as we achieve development goals, we aren't creating sustainable results and cycles that will perpetuate themselves. So from USAID's perspective, this kind of partnership really is a no-brainer, and this kind of engagement is part of what we should be doing. 2/3 of the world's poorest and hungriest people live and work in agriculture. And with Feed the Future, which is the US government and President Obama's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative, we focus on those 2/3 of those poorest people who live and work in rural areas and rely on agriculture for both their food and their income. These are mostly women, and this is who we look to serve. So when we think of these, we like to call them smallholder farmers. Agriculture, this is a market activity, this is a growth activity. To prosper, these mostly women and their children who are relying on the product of their work to eat, they need markets for their food. And they also need to have healthy, good foods available for them to purchase when they make incomes. So Partners in Food Solutions has just been a critical partner in achieving those goals. This partnership with these companies and with our other organizations with them have reached 829,000 smallholder farmers. So 829,000 farmers have benefited from better training. They've benefited from markets for their products. And in addition, many more people are benefiting from the availability of nutritious foods for their children and for them. And these nutritious activities help them withstand health emergencies, they help them pay more attention in school, and they directly contribute to GDP in these countries. So this is absolutely essential and necessary, and we are so proud that part of what we can do is bring strong American talent to bear against the issues that we're solving. The tagline for USAID, if you ever see a bag of food delivered in a humanitarian assistance situation, it says USAID, there are two hands folded, and it says from the American people. Part of our work as government servants is to bring the best of the American people to bear against the work that we're doing. And so not only are we bringing these strong brands into our work, we're also bringing dedicated employees who sitting in Minnesota or in a factory someplace in the South may never have thought of these countries. And now they are directly interfacing and showing the best of the American people to the companies and the populations that we are serving. One of the things that always causes us some consternation at USAID is the foreign assistance budget development is less than 0.5% of the total US government spending. And activities like this, where we really are connecting the best of what we do abroad, not only does it help us achieve our results, but it also helps develop ambassadors for this kind of work that yields many dividends and is a very cost-effective way to promote the American story and the goodwill of the American people. So we are really honored to be up on this stage today.
Great. Thank you, Tjada. So Will, TechnoServe is an incredible organization that figured out ahead of most of us that engaging the private sector in the developing world could actually have outsized social impact. Describe for a few minutes TechnoServe's view on how working with small and growing businesses in Africa, particularly food companies, contributes to strong development outcomes, and then maybe talk a little bit about how companies like General Mills and Hershey's can help that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's a real pleasure to be here and a real honor to be a part of this partnership. As you said, our founder almost 50 years ago founded an organization about business solutions to poverty, which sits quite in the middle of the mainstream today. Bono was talking about it himself at the UN just a couple of days ago. But 50 years ago, it was a fairly radical notion. We've been committed to this for a long time, believing that if we can help smallholder farmers and small businesses access some skills they need, business skills, agronomy skills, and others, some access to finance, and connect them into markets, that they can earn a good living and earn their way out of poverty, and that will last over time because these are commercial relationships which make sense on straight commercial terms. That has borne fruit now for 50 years, and we've built an organization. Although we're a nonprofit, most of our staff come from the for-profit sector and bring management consulting, agribusiness, and other skills to help solve these problems. What does that look like in the Partnership for Food Solutions work on the ground? In part, it looks like our staff helping to identify these very promising food processing companies, to do a needs assessment and to work with you and these corporations to help sketch out the kind of assistance that can be really transformational for them, that these PhD food scientists from General Mills and Hershey and our other partners can provide them. We then are there with them on the ground as those interactions are going on and helping them to implement those solutions which these food scientists are recommending to them, and simultaneously engaging with other players in the market. I think one of the great things about the PFS approach is that it really is holistic. So we're working, for example, with bureaus of standards to help develop national standards around some of these things, trying to build an ecosystem that is supportive of business and allows this to scale. We do a lot of corporate partnerships in our work broadly, but I must say that working with small food processors, as we do in PFS, provides a number of benefits. Some of them are around food security and health. The greater availability of nutritious foods that this work is resulting in is really contributing to the reduction of food insecurity. And people, a lot of other things get publicity. People hear a lot about AIDS and they hear a lot about malaria. But it's important for people to understand that in developing countries, 60% of all child deaths are linked to hunger and malnutrition. So it's a huge public health benefit that we can get to in doing this kind of work. We also, this partnership results in significant economic gains by working with these small food processors. There are astonishing knock-on effects up and down the value chain when you help these small food processors become more productive. They are dealing with transport companies, they're dealing with packagers, they're affecting the retail sector, and they're employing directly and indirectly through their business partners large numbers of people. To give you a sense of what this looks like in some of the markets where we work, it's worth noting that in Kenya, 27% of GDP comes from income which is indirectly related to the ag sector, the kinds of things I mentioned. So these are major parts of these economies really being stimulated through the work that we're doing together. And last but certainly not least is that the growth of these effective food processors provides a market for millions of smallholder farmers. That's invaluable. The majority of the world's poor are earning through farming. And when they have a market and they know that they can sell what they can grow, that's really transformational. I would just close. It's funny, Ken, I was going to close and talk about the food processor you mentioned in Malawi. You talked about how the General Mills team helped them to totally reformulate their product. It was fascinating for us, and a little of the magic of the General Mills scientists. This was a food that was given free of charge to poorly nourished kids in Malawi. They were not eating it, and the company was getting in trouble with the World Food Program because the kids didn't like it. And your scientists worked their magic, I think, on understanding a taste profile, but also something called mouthfeel, and reworked the whole processing process to improve how it felt, to the extent that the kids are licking their bowls clean when they get this now. And the World Food Program, which had suspended the contract with this processor, reinstated it. So it's just one example of what these PhD food scientists can bring across the ocean. So again, we're delighted to be a part of this.
There's an old saw in the food industry, it's only nutritious if you eat it.
And as you all know, we don't think about this, but if you're receiving a school lunch program, a food aid program, there's not a 1-800 consumer number to call. But doesn't a kid in Malawi deserve the same quality as our kids here? So thanks, Will. Willy, you are fittingly last, as we were late to understand that companies in Africa didn't only need know-how, they needed cash to run their business. Share with us a little bit about how Root Capital bridges that financial gap for small and growing businesses, and then discuss a little bit the benefits of pairing that money with the technical assistance that companies like these bring.
Sure. Well, thank you, and it's really great to be here. So Root Capital, we were a nonprofit financial institution that makes loans and provides financial training to agricultural businesses in Africa and Latin America. And so as we've heard, these are businesses that organize and purchase crops from often hundreds of farmers. They employ tens or hundreds more in their processing facilities. They sell affordable, nutritious foods to local consumers, and really these businesses play a pivotal role in generating employment in rural areas, and they have potential to be engines of economic growth in developing economies. The challenge is that they fall into what's called the missing middle. So they're too big for microfinance, yet still too small, too risky for commercial banks. So they really struggle to access capital that they need to grow their operation, to purchase from more farmers, to employ more workers, to produce more nutritious foods. So our organization, Root Capital, really focuses on meeting the financing needs of these agricultural businesses. So short-term loans for working capital, long-term loans for to invest in processing equipment, for instance. And we also work on strengthening the financial management skills of our clients in order for them to be able to qualify for and manage loans. And so these two things, capital and financial management, are two critical pieces to the growth and the success of these agricultural businesses, but it's not enough. Right? It's really not enough. And as discussed, these businesses also need the technical know-how to go from milling flour to formulating a new nutritious porridge, or to install and to efficiently utilize a new piece of equipment that might double or triple their production capacity. So that's where Partners in Food Solutions comes in, and that's really the power of this alliance that you see represented here on the stage. So Root Capital can make a loan to a high-impact business, but if the business doesn't know how to deploy that capital, then the impact will be limited. And likewise, PFS and TechnoServe can build the capacity within a business, but if the business can't access capital to purchase raw material or to invest in the equipment they need, then again, the impact is going to be limited. So capacity plus capital is really the winning recipe, and working with some of the world's leading food companies and technical assistance providers doesn't hurt either. So just quickly, here's what it looks like on the ground. So Classic Foods is a client of ours in Kenya. It's run by an amazing woman entrepreneur that Jeff knows well, named Stella Kimemia. Was founded in 2007 and now purchases milk on a daily basis from 2,500 farmers, 3/4 of whom are women. The company employs another 25 in its factory, and it sells into local retailers in Kenya. And it does much more than just connect dairy farmers to local markets. They provide training to farmers for sustainable production methods and proper use of farm inputs. They produce and distribute animal feed to increase the productivity of the farmers' cows. And then the PFS teams come in, first to help the company to optimize the nutrient formulation of the animal feed, then to increase the shelf life of the milk products, then to develop an entirely new product line of porridges, which is a staple food in the region. And most recently, with further support from the PFS teams, the company expanded its line of nutritious foods and beverages, including fruit juice and tomato sauce and honey. Yet all the while, Classic Foods was systematically locked out of the local banking system because of the missing middle that I mentioned. So enter Root Capital, and earlier this year, we made an initial working capital loan of $55,000 to purchase raw milk. And then subsequently, we made a long-term loan of $222,000 to invest in pulping machine and juice processors in order for them to have capacity to serve this growing market segment. And the results of all this over the past 3 years, you've had a doubling of the number of farmers they're purchasing from, double revenues of the company, and double the milk output. And thanks to the technical capacity and the capital access from the institutions that are on this stage, it's more profitable, the company. It's also offering a much wider range of nutritious foods and products. And this is in a continent, Africa, that in recent decades has become a net importer of foods and of agricultural products. And that's why we're so excited to be part of this collaboration. So delighted to be here today.
Thanks, Willy. We have a few more minutes, so I'm going to shift gears with a couple questions. The first one's going to be for that half of the panel, starting with Tjada, and the second one will be for this half. Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wudunn recently released a book called The Path of Peers. There's a quote in there that says, the best three-letter word in the fight against poverty is spelled not AID, but JOB. So Jada, I'm going to put you on the spot as someone with AID in their title. Yeah. Talk about the shift that's happening actually within USAID and your view on that quote.
People, everyone looks, people want dignity. They want the dignity. They want to go to work every day. They want to be able to feed their families. They want to be able to send their children to school. Like when you talk to farmers or builders or urban laborers or even very wealthy people in the US, they all say the same things. Like, I want to send my kids to good school. I want to do these things. And so people do need jobs. And sometimes aid, especially in extreme situations where there have been natural disasters or things, sometimes a pure handout is what's needed to get people on the glide path to be able to get the job. But the most sustainable, for the long-term run, people do need jobs, they need opportunities, they need access to markets, they need the skills and the training to become part of the broader economy. And with just a little bit of a push, they're there and they're eager to take advantage, and their community, the whole communities benefit from a job.
Right. Willy, anything you'd add?
I'll jump in on, I think the importance of having public sector and private sector is, in effect, what we're talking about in many respects is you're working in almost pre-commercial markets that require a lot of innovation and public and private dollars and capabilities to work together. And I think those public-private partnerships, if we can drive down the subsidy required to be able to have pathways from pre-commercial to commercial so that corporates can really engage and bring all of the power of their non-financial assets to bear to address some of the greatest problems. I think that's really powerful. We got to make the business case to the corporates, and these corporates are doing that this is something that should be invested in. We need to make the impact case to impact investors, to donors, that they should be providing that smart subsidy to be able to achieve these goals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Part of our philosophy is that we don't give away anything to the people that we work with, many of them in great need. The only thing we're going to provide them for free is information. And that's the great part of a public-private partnership like this. There is the public investment to give them the information so that they're capable of filling that job or generating that job going forward. But there's great dignity and agency when you can earn your way out of poverty rather than take a handout.
Great, thanks. With our limited time, final thought from you, Ken, final thought from you, JP.
Well, I just want to tag on to a comment that Tjada made. I met a woman a couple years ago in Africa, Veronica, and she was a farmer. She's a farmer in, I think it was Kenya, and you know, she lost her husband and kids to AIDS. She had 2 left. She had adopted a bunch, and I met her and we asked her questions. I have no idea what she was saying, but I will tell you, she was doing this, and 2, and 3, and 4, and you could feel her pride, and you could feel that she knew what she was able to use the information we gave her. We had made her farm prosper because of the downstream demand at food processors that we had supported. And she was just a perfect example of a very strong woman who's doing a lot for her community. And by strengthening that value chain, you know, we made her farm work. And you know, you could just feel the pride and the leadership in that woman. And you know what? It didn't take a lot. It just took helping a little bit of small food processors in her area. And it was a very powerful experience for me.
Great, thank you. JP?
I think one of the things that I've learned over the last several years is about a concept we call pre-competitive collaboration. And there's a lot of power there. So when I first had the opportunity to, I've lived in Africa, but when I had the opportunity to go back and look at some of the cocoa growing regions, one of the things I observed is a lot of companies were doing a lot of small things and they were very well intended. Those same companies may compete with each other at some point in time in the marketplace, but on a pre-competitive basis, the social impact that they want to have, they can actually cooperate around and bring together greater resource against fewer ideas that become more powerful and sustainable. And so I just share with you on my own journey this idea of looking for ways that we can work together on common interests many times are more powerful than segmenting our efforts against maybe what for an individual company would be a special interest. So this pre-competitive collaboration I think is a very interesting idea.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. Please join me in thanking this great panel.